Hello and welcome to Spiritual Revolution. We have a special show for you guys tonight with the Autonomy Executive Director, Joshua Hale, who is going to be telling us about his turning point story and going all the way to the depths of darkness and then climbing all the way back up. So please welcome Joshua. How do you want to start this?
Good evening, Agnieszka. Thank you so much for having me on. I heard about your podcast. I got to tune in last week, and I was pleased when you brought this up that I could be a guest on your show.
Nice. Actually, I'm going to change the view. There we go. I just decided to change it because there are too many listeners. All right, so where do you want to start with this?
Well, I do have kind of a rather unique spiritual journey, and to understand that, you really have to know how I was raised, and kind of my whole gambit of how I got to be in the position and life that I am now. Because who I am now is drastically different than who I was 10 years ago, 10 years before that, and it really starts off with being raised in a religious household. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and what's really challenging being raised in a family like that is that uh, they you don't have any other outside perspective, and so what information and lifestyle was taught to me, uh, they literally use like words like the truth and uh, so growing up from an infant, like I had no way to the base reality based upon or in juxtaposed to what anyone else was experiencing on the planet. I just knew my family and the church that I was in and that lifestyle well into my teens.
You mean you didn't know that there were other religions and other people, other belief systems?
I only knew of them as like in a good bad kind of framework. So I knew there was others, but everyone who wasn't like in our club was essentially bad. I think the language they use is worldly, which is a funny term to
Worldly? Really?
world worldly. Yeah, everyone else is worldly, and so the whole system is just really meant to just keep everyone um, inside of the organization and not stray. So the my saving grace out of that was like, okay, I'll just give you a little bit of glimpse. Like I wasn't allowed to do any school sports, any school extracurricular activities. I was literally just allowed to like go to school and then come back home. All of my friends only consisted of other kids from inside of the church. So this was how I was raised well into my teens, into high school, and it kept me with a really like small worldview, because like I didn't question that, because why would I question that when I was raised on the truth, and that's the only input that I was given the whole time. So lo and behold, started being a teenager and started to ask questions. And what my saving grace out of all this was that I fell in love, like my first like real girlfriend, and no, ended up being my eldest daughter's mom, and we fell in love. And uh, because of that, I was essentially told like, hey, you guys are getting like too serious. The girl I was dating, she was like not in good favor in the church, and so I was totally given an ultimatum of, hey,
Wait.
either
So she was not in good favor before she got pregnant or after?
we met and she was in good favor, and then she like fell out, and I still like loved her.
Okay.
So I I was given an ultimatum and was told like, hey, you're not allowed to associate with her anymore. And I was like, I'm in love. Like, how can this be wrong? And I just kept asking that question, like, I'm in love. Like, how is this wrong? How is this wrong? How is this wrong? I kept being told I'm not allowed to do that. I stuck to my guns. And they threatened me with, they call it disfellowshipping. And I was 14 at the time. And I could not get a satisfactory answer of why this was wrong because I was in love. It was a very pure relationship. Obviously, a teenager in love. You can imagine the strength of this experience, but nobody could give me a straight answer. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be following what feels right inside. And I literally was kicked out of my family's home, my parents' home, kicked out of the church.
Wait, at 14?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I got disfellowshipped, and then I was working by then, and I was starting to hang out with other people outside of the church. So over about a year, my parents were like, "You're out of control. You need to get out of here." And so, and I started experimenting with drugs, and I'm sure I looked very much out of control. And in hindsight, I was out of control, but I was very determined to not be in this like control system anymore. And so I was just sticking to my guns and rebelling full blown. And
by the way, that's what you're supposed to do at that age, because otherwise you develop unhealthy attachments with your parents, which make you be a 40-year-old man who still lives in the basement and doesn't have a job. So, blessings.
Fair enough. And I think of things differently now to where with support and some light guidance, you can allow those teenagers to go through that and gain their autonomy in a less reckless way than I was handling it.
Yeah.
But I stuck to my guns, like I said, ended up, getting kicked out, moving out of my parents' house. And the real challenge of that, like I said, my whole community, all friends were all built into that system. So I literally had to turn my back and walk away from all that. All my aunts and uncles, all my grandparents, like everyone I literally knew. So I went off on my own path, and it led into like a destructive lifestyle. I gained drug habits. This is where I'll kind of just cruise through my late teens and 20s. My eldest daughter was born. I was out of my mind on like how to raise a child. I was only 18, and I had no clue how to raise a child. Luckily, saving grace, mother's older sister adopted her from the hospital. And so she got to stay in the family. I just became kind of the cool uncle, and I got to see her periodically throughout the year. So that really worked out like beautifully in hindsight. I have a great relationship with her now. But then, so I was free of a child, and then.
How old is your oldest daughter now?
She's 22.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a trip. So I have a 2-year-old and a 22-year-old. I love them both.
How do they like each other?
They love each other. My 2-year-old's infatuated with her long hair.
Nice.
So then the dark night of the soul, right? I was coming out of this whole mess, and I had this like dualistic mentality of that, because I got kicked out of God's church, I was no longer in God's favor. And so I must have been like with the other side. If I wasn't on God's team, I must have been on the other side. So I kind of went through this whole mind mess of I see it now as like being born and raised in a box. And then I was stuck in this box because I thought there was just good and evil, and like I was just describing. And then one day I got out of the box.
Sounds like Plato's cave.
Yeah, yeah, Plato's cave. And I was really angry at like organized religion after that in my early 20s. Like I wanted nothing to do with anything religious and spiritual. Like I thought they were the same thing. And it was when I hit 26, I came across one of like Eckhart Tolle's books. And that was really groundbreaking because it brought to my attention that inside of me, I have a connection to something. And no like physical church could take that connection away from me. So I call that now like my connection to source, the source of all things. And once I like understood that, then that really started my path on spirituality and realizing like, oh, like my connection to God isn't something the church bestows upon me. It's something that I inherently have, and no one can take that away from me. So that was the seed that really got planted. And then at that point, I really kind of started having my awakening process, slow and low. Like I thought about meditation and I didn't know how to meditate. And I ended up in like St. Thomas and came across like a book on meditation, and it had me light a candle in a room by myself and just look at the candle flame. And it just sits there and flickers. And it's like very entrancing. And that was my first like kind of meditative experience of just chilling, focusing on something, and just then being able to
hang on. So I'm a little confused about this one part, because you said you were kicked out of the house. You were 14 years old, and then you were into drugs and stuff. And then suddenly, how did you? Because you obviously had a room and a roof over your head, so it wasn't that bad. I mean, how dark was your dark night of the soul?
Oh, okay. Let me back up a little bit. I got into the electronic music scene in Seattle. I became a roommate with a DJ. I started going to these like amazing mind melting parties, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever, right? Being raised from this Christian background, and then experiencing these like awesome underground parties. From then, I decided I wanted to be a DJ. I wanted to do that too, and so I practiced, and then after practicing DJing for a year, back then with records, there was no like electronic equipment back then. I finally felt I was at a level to practice out in the club. So yeah. Anyways, that moved me into a whole career of being a DJ. I DJed downtown and at festivals for about a decade through my 20s. And with that came, I had very little self-control, and I had horrendous drug habits. So I've done psychedelics probably over 100 times in my life. My life consisted of parties on the weekends, and then hangover, and then recovering all week long, and doing that week after week after week after week for about a decade.
Did you only work on the weekends then?
Say that again?
Did you only work on the weekends?
I cooked. I worked in the restaurant industry. I never really had much money, but always had enough to party. And so, yeah, I worked throughout the weeks. I dropped out of school when I was a sophomore, which in hindsight now, I'm very thankful of. But never had like college education. So back then I thought I was going to be a dropout and going to be, never amount to much.
The cliche.
And so, so I just partied, and I was really good at that. But I developed like really horrendous drug habits. By early 20s, I was doing cocaine, smoking coke. I was tried heroin for the first time, I think when I was 20. And then by the time I was like 25, I was doing heroin pretty regularly. You tend to like kind of be a personality type. Do you like uppers? Do you like downers? And I was definitely in the downer crowd. And that would like charge me up. I could do a bunch of downers and then stay up all night and have what I considered a good time. And that, yeah, just went on for weeks and weeks and months and years and years and years. So as I jumped to where I was 26 and like wanting to meditate, I was having these like massive ups and massive downs and drug addictions. I smoked weed every day throughout the day. I remember going like several years with like never not having a day without weed. I drank just about every night. I would drink like fifths of alcohol at 2 o'clock in the morning. Never, I always found myself in good company. But
sorry, what's a fifth of alcohol? Is like a big bottle or something?
Yeah, well, a liter, I guess.
Oh, okay.
5 liters, yeah. So, yeah, because of that, I didn't have much self-development. I didn't have much emotional intelligence because I considered myself like an escape artist. I would never really be there experiencing reality. I was always altered and chasing the highs. And so I never really got to develop because I just wanted to party. And that lasted all the way through till I was 32, 33. And so those seeds I got planted, Eckhart Tolle, giving me like permission to have my own connection. And then the desire to meditate and meditating or trying to meditate and then realizing like when you try, you are meditating. And that was, I found myself in St. Thomas in the Caribbean. And my roommate at that time, she told me about Vipassana meditation. And I was like, man, I don't know what that is, but like, that's my next step. And so I lived in the Caribbean for about 8 months and I signed up for Vipassana.
Were you still doing drugs in the Caribbean or just like smoking weed or everything?
Cool thing about the Caribbean was I got down there and after a couple weeks, I got enough alcohol in me. I like asked somebody at the bar, I was like, hey, do you know where I can get any like opiates? And he's like, no, there's no opiates on the whole island, but there's tons of cocaine. And I was like, really? No opiates? What was so fascinating about that was up until then, there's just this nagging voice in my head of drug addiction and like wanting to score. And once I was told I was in a place where it was not possible for me to get it, that part of my brain was like, oh, okay. And like, shut off. I was like, this is amazing. Like for the first time in years, I like don't have this devil on my shoulder telling me to like keep looking for drugs till I got them. So that was awesome. So I got 8 months of experiencing that in the Caribbean. And I did a bunch of cocaine because that was just what everybody did. You did cocaine to not be so drunk so you could drink more. And so that's what I did for 8 months. And then signed up for Vipassana, flew back because in the Caribbean, on St. Thomas, it's a great place to go to, but they have an in season and an off season. When the in season is because it's a non-rainy season, but they have the most cruise ship docks of any island in the world. And so they would have like 8 cruise ships come into the harbor. All those people would flood the island, buy all sorts of shit, flood the economy with money. But then when those cruise ships stop coming in because it's rainy season, it gets really dangerous to be there because all those local families that depend on that money don't have it. And it's not safe being a white person on that island. So I got out of there, came back to the States and went into my Vipassana Vipassana meditation center, and I didn't know what I was doing, but yeah, I knew that was my next step.
So I did Vipassana, and it was nightmarish. It was good.
Yeah.
It was the best thing that I've ever done, but it was the worst thing that I've ever done.
Yeah, it was the hardest thing I had ever done up to that point, by far. And for me, that experience was, like painful. You don't really have a lot of information.
They take away your car keys?
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah, so it's 9 days silent meditation. You don't speak the whole time, and you like wake up at 5 a.m., meditate, you have breakfast, meditate, you meditate some more, then you have lunch, then you meditate, and then you walk around outside, do walking meditation, then you have dinner, then you meditate, and then you come in and you do the Dharma, into the Dharma hall, and then you watch like 45-minute presentation
propaganda video on Buddhism.
Yeah, from Vico,
but it's 4 a.m. It's 4 a.m. Joshua, not 5 a.m. because I remember that vividly.
4 a.m.
Yeah, it's
early.
This big gong.
A really intense schedule, and yeah, I had a really huge aha moment on like day three, I think. It was we were asked to meditate for the longest duration yet. It was like an hour and a half, I want to say. And so you're just sitting there, and you and your mind in this meditation hall with a bunch of other people, and two people up front that are staring back, looking at everybody. So to like make sure you got your eyes closed and you're meditating, doing what you're supposed to do. But I thought I read somewhere like just sit there and meditate and like don't move. So I'm like sitting there cross-legged, Indian style, and my legs start like shaking because I'm trying not to move. This is like half hour, 40 minutes into my meditation, and I'm screaming at myself in my head, I'm not going to move. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to move. And I'm like sitting there Indian style. My legs, muscles are just burning. I've never experienced that kind of pain. And like an hour into that, my body's just like shaking. I'm so uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden my mind just like, I have this like nirvana is the best way to describe it. And my mind stopped screaming. My body's, I like stopped feeling it. I was in this super euphoric state. And my mind, for the first time, like in my life, just was quiet. And I just sat there in awe. Afterwards, got up to leave out of the auditorium. And on the wall it said, if you experience discomfort while sitting, feel free to move around.
Well, many paths, right?
Yeah. So made it through 9 days of silent meditation. And yeah, it was the hardest thing I ever done. There's lots of more stories in there, but I'm going to just breeze through that. Got back out into the real world. I remember going to my first like grocery store, and I'm like, there's music and people talking over the intercoms, and I was just like sensory overload. I was like, you guys operate like this all the time? Like, this is crazy how much lights and advertisements and voices over the intercom. It was pretty intense. Yeah. That started to wane at that point, and then like started to have a beer here, beer there, and I got back into drugs like over the next couple months. And in that time though, I was like jumping through rabbit holes at that point and learning all sorts of stuff, and I came across this book called Voyagers, and
Cool.
it was pretty intense stuff. It was talking about like 15-dimensional science and like how our ancient history. I'll just put that lightly. And that really caught my attention, and I kind of like dug into that. It offered a bunch of cool meditations using symbols and colors, and I got like pretty fascinated by it. So I started like trying to just get my hands on as much material as I could. And at that time, my life was this is like 2011. It's a very like crucial moment in my life that drug habits were like coming back harder than ever. I was out DJing and partying, going to festivals, and it was, uh, yeah, getting to a point where like I was setting habits that were going to be with me for the rest of my life, and I was in such denial of the pain I was in, the lack of development, but I had this like kind of meditation practice where I knew this like grounding was starting to take place, and I could see how destructive my lifestyle was and the drugs I was doing and this like chaotic ups and downs that I was being tossed around in. And I knew I like wanted out, but I had, yeah, horrendous habits. My lifestyle was completely like built and absorbed or centered around partying, and just all my friends were drug addicts and dealers and that whole lifestyle.
So, can I ask you a question? Because so I've known you for over a year and a half, and you're a really intelligent person and you're well read and stuff. So when you were on all these drugs and partying and stuff, did you still read, like research and learn and educate yourself, or was that all like in the last 7 years?
I would say that I read lightly. Like I said, I picked up Eckhart Tolle, and then I was like kind of reading things in those few days that like I didn't have a hangover and I wasn't like pursuing women and partying and drugs. So I got into this rhythm where I would drive up to Seattle, I would DJ, stay up all night, party till Sunday, and then come home and just crash. And then like Tuesday, Wednesday, I started like feeling better. And then by Thursday, I started feeling fine. And then I went out and did the same thing over again. So I was during that week part, I was starting to like take in information, but to jump to the answer to your question, not really, because I don't remember majority of my life. It takes my like friends and photos to jar any type of memory. So there might be some knowledge in there, but like it's really not attainable to me because it went in damage basically.
Unless you go back to Vipassana.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah. So at that point, I started to have this dual lifestyle where I'm like, I know I need to be more grounded, and I moved out of downtown Seattle. I moved out into the country, and that's where I really started feeling this like crazy fast lifestyle in the city, and then out in the country, like things were slowing down enough for me to like start to want to have a better type of lifestyle. And so this is like, yeah, 2011, and still going to festivals. Then I like met my now wife, met her at Burning Man, and then we hooked up at a festival probably about 8 months later. And she was a great partner for me at the time because she had drug habits too. She was you know, she liked to hook people up, and so and she didn't drink. And so she was like a perfect partner because she got to drive me all the way around partying to DJ gigs. She was sober, not drunk on alcohol. And so I was like, you're a perfect partner for me. It was great. But we ended up just having both like horrendous drug habits. I kind of was on the dark side. She was kind of on the uppity side. But she was really fascinated by my meditation practices I had started. And so she started doing them. And a friend of mine said, is like, hey, I'm so glad you got her as your wife, man, because she really pulled you out of it. And I was like, no. That's not how it went. Like, I ended up doing my own internal work. And luckily we did have each other as a partnership, but uh, I was doing these meditation practices and I literally found like the internal switch of the addiction that was inside of me. And I remember it very clearly after this specific meditation. And then later that night we went back to the dealer's house, and for the first time like in my life, previously it always felt when I was like around drugs or like had the opportunity to get drugs that a noose was around my shoulder and I was like being yanked into these decisions like beyond my control. I had times where I was like pulling out my phone and dialing people without my conscious like choice. It was so strong. And so that time I realized from that meditation and the work did internally, I had a choice. We went to a dealer's house. He said, hey, do you want some of this? And I was like, oh, I have a choice right now. I'm not being yanked into a decision. And I still chose to do it. But that was a very pivotal point. That was the last time I actually ever did heroin. I did it and I was like, this isn't very satisfying. Next time I was around it and I'm like, I have no need for this in my life anymore. And after finding that switch, I'm really familiar with this, with like addictive patterns. And after that, I quit doing after heroin. I ended up quitting hard liquor, and then I ended up quitting alcohol. I ended up quitting pot, and then last, I ended up quitting smoking. This was about over 3 years. Smoking took a really long time. But it was all after that meditation process and finding an anchor inside of myself that I was able to then address all these habitual patterns that had hooked into my person into my being. And when I came out of that fog, like of the heroin and the heavy drug use, I realized I was like still making like fart and like inappropriate jokes that would probably get me in a lot of trouble nowadays. But my mentality was that of when I started using back when I was like 14, 15. My mentality hadn't progressed. My emotions hadn't evolved. I when I came out of that fog, I had these like,
So
yeah, attitude.
this is an interesting point because I have this theory and I've observed it for I don't know 15 years now, but I've had this theory for a while that when somebody's like your traumatic event was at 14 when you got kicked out of the church, right? So as it comes out like as you're pressured and how world pressures people, right? What comes out is the mentality of the traumatic event, and then one is invited to do work to overcome that, right?
Right. So when I stopped running away from how shitty my life was and started facing everything, my mental and emotional developmental states were still a teenager. And because of that, and this is kind of a secret to my success now, is I was like 33 when I finally like owned who I was and realized like I had no education, I had no like career, I had like yeah, I didn't have a whole lot, but and so that just motivated me like I got to figure shit out, and so that literally got me up every morning that I needed to gain emotional intelligence, financial intelligence, intellectual self-defense. So I had this tremendous momentum ever since 2013 to just be the best that I could possibly be, because I had this feeling of the times we were in. This is unlike times like none of our parents and grandparents have ever seen any shit like this. And I knew there was things on its way, and I needed to prepare myself.
So maybe what happened is you came here for the changeover, and you knew you had the 20 years to go, so you just had fun for the 20 years, and now you're ready for the changeover.
It is an interesting theory because what I've learned in spirituality is you can make your body so toxic with drugs that things don't want to go inside of it. And so this is kind of just where yeah, I heard that, and it made a lot of sense that I was in a way shielding myself from the world by just keeping myself very toxic
and keeping yourself artificially 14.
Yeah. And so when I hit 33, I was like fully awoke and actualized. And since then, yeah, I've kept up on my meditations, and specifically, it's called neurogenesis through biospiritual development, and it's using symbols, lights, meditation to anchor yourself and to connect to your larger self, so that you literally start making new neurons in your brain. And we do like future meditation where I can project myself into the future to my future self and bring back like DNA back into my current self in order to activate.
So was that from that book that you showed us earlier today?
Yeah.
Can you show it again?
Yeah. So this is called Voyagers, The Secrets of a Mentee. This is from a larger body of work called the Tantriora Biospiritual Development, also known as Keylontic Science. It's, if you look for it online, there's so much like junk and misinformation that you really just need to go to the source material if you're curious about it and check it out, because I was blown away by it. And like a lot of people might be surprised, but I've integrated this information so deeply that I just am who I am now. And I just live this life as a walking, breathing person of who I am. Like my greater self is with me all the time. And so now I just operate, and I don't have to, I'm not in conflict. I don't question myself. I don't question myself. I just am. And I know my principles. I know my values. I know from a like frequency standpoint is how I'll describe it, like what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And I'm very clear in my decisions. And so now I just move forward and operate from that center of power. And Rich helped me like understand this, that I can't convey what I've learned as my belief system to others, because no one's been able to walk in my shoes and experience everything that took place in my life in order for me to have this very unique situation and circumstance and lifestyle that validated everything for me and continues to do so at every choice I make. And that's okay. Like, it's not my job to try and like pass this on as truth for you. It's up to you to develop your own truth. And if you want to know like the data that I have, then I'm happy to share that. But it's not, I had to go through the savior complex of, it's not my job to save anyone.
Well, if you want to save us a little bit, you could drop us the link to the book in the class chat or something.
Sure. But the savior complex is because I went through it like, oh my gosh, I'm learning to meditate. Like everybody needs to know this.
Right.
It's another trap.
Was very preachy. What's that, Lee?
Hey, my friend, it's wonderful to see you. And I want to just say one more thing. Another soul goes free. Another soul is freed. I'm so proud of you. And I'm so glad you're alive. I'm so glad you're alive. I'm so glad that I'm going to spend the rest of my life thanking you for the part you played in where I am today. Thank you. I'm going to spend my life thanking you, you know, and yeah. And that Jesus or Messiah is another trap, you know. It's just, you know, that's why they kept going. That's why you keep going, because you don't want to go back where your feet are sticky, right? Like, anyway, go on. You're awesome. I love you, man. You're great.
Thanks, Lee. This is awesome that Lee's here. We just had he had a blueprint call last week, or in the last 2 weeks, and I was able to help him get into autonomy. So it is very synchronistic that, yeah, he's here right now. So yeah, had to learn. It's not my job to save anybody. Everybody's responsible of saving themselves. And in doing that, I switched from trying to pour my energy out, trying to help others, to just being this living, breathing, emitting entity that then influences his world around him. But I'm not being yanked about by needing to save people.
Sorry, had to unmute myself. Awesome. Well, so I wanted to just notice something about face reading for you, because I mean, I look at your face and it's very well balanced and everything seems right, but then there's this one thing that I can't help to notice, and I wonder if it's your religious upbringing, but maybe you can enlighten us. So when I look at your face, there's hair growing into your forehead a little bit like this, in like a little V here. Do you see that?
In the middle or on the sides?
No, on the sides. See, right there? Yeah. So, if you talk, because it switches back to me. Just to show.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So what that means, that little bit of hair, is that means that, you know, even though you've worked so hard and you've balanced out, sometimes when you're like under pressure, that original programming with your parents or your elders or whoever was like you were under the impression of, still keeps running through your head. So there are still voices, not your voice. Maybe you've gotten rid of your inner critic, but there are still these outside voices, pre-recorded messages from childhood, running the course through your head sometimes.
So let me describe about this, because this is really beautiful. So ever since that like moment where I found that switch and I like turned it on, the drug addiction started to fall away. And I just really started aiming to be my best self. I've worked on the family relationships I have, and I really understood that like I had to forgive them in order to like get this off of the burden off of me. And so my dad, he felt really guilty about not being there when I was younger, and through all the hardship that I went through. And I think I was like, 20, probably like 29 or 30 after kind of that Urquhart Toll like period, and just like starting to anchor myself. He came over and I looked him in the eye in our conversation. I'm like, hey Dad, I just want you to know, like, I forgive you for everything. And he tried to like deflect it and be like, oh, like, I was like, no, Dad, I forgive you for everything. He like started crying and like his shoulders just like slumped. But I could tell he was carrying around a huge like burden that was like in the way, like it was unnecessary. And so I was able to like forgive him, and in return, like an aspect of myself was forgiven. And I'm happy to say, like, even though, which is pretty remarkable, my family is not supposed to like associate with me because of their religion and their beliefs, but I'm happy to say it. My mom, my dad, my sister, like we all have like a good relationship now, and we're on speaking terms. And through the last 10 years, like I can call them up and like have a normal relationship with them, and they're a part of my life. They're a part of my daughter's life, and I had to go through and like face those challenges individually. And what's been really amazing is even DJing. I thought I was gonna have to give up everything when I like got clean and sober, and to my surprise, those like coolest aspects that I loved, family, even DJing, like they've now reintegrated back into my life in a cleaner way. Like DJing, I now DJ, or I was DJing for yoga classes. And so I get to like have that great experience, share music with people in a yoga environment, and everybody's clean and sober. And I've also done a static dance, which is like sober events. And so all these relationships in my life, I've had to like face them and not fix them, but face them and like rewire them so that I wasn't carrying around that baggage. Is that what you meant?
So, do we have any other questions from the audience? I kind of lost track of the question, but I'm quite fascinating with your story and everything, and the whole Vipassana thing. I mean, I went, so it's still visceral for me, and I went several years ago, 7 years ago. Yeah,
that's about when I went too.
Yeah, I think we talked about that once, like long time ago, that we went in the same year or something.
Yeah.
But in totally different parts of the world. Yeah. Maybe. Well, you know that saying that astrologers are billionaires, or millionaires don't use astrologers, billionaires do. And that always kind of rings in my head. And when I see alignments like that, I'm like, oh, maybe it was like a planetary thing, and we just didn't even know about it because we're not paying attention, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that way. I don't often share that often, just because my lifestyle, like people that really know me, my close friends and family, the people that visit me, like they know this about me, and we have these conversations. But at least in Autonomy, this was something that I did, like, haven't had the need to share with anyone, because I'm here to like chew bubble gum and take names. So I'm just here to make things happen.
Nice. Okay, there was a question. I think I saw somebody unmute.
Lee?
Hey. Wow, eh? Here we are. And you're standing, you're smiling. Anushka, she's plugged in. She's doing what she does, being a great person, a great self, and making this happen, right? You're making things happen. She's making things happen. And we're all in this dance, this beautiful movement of people and energy and things and lives and worlds and all this stuff. And we're all a part of it. It's all a part of us, right? Someone who says, that we are made of star stuff. I believe that, great things. Great things have evolved or contributed to us in these forms that we wear them today, but who knows where we'll go and what we will see as we go beyond, and we can understand beyond what we can understand now. And so have you read Chasing the Scream by Johann Hari? Do you know that?
Yeah, that was really informative.
Oh my God, right?
Yeah.
Right? Very useful to me and many people, I believe. He's not book, like you.
That book, real quick, is about a meth addict from college who wanted to be a writer, and so he wanted to write a book about addiction. And so he went around the world interviewing people about addiction. He quit doing meth and then traveled around the world. But huge like revelations in there of like what addiction is, what's working around the world, what isn't. Sorry, Lee, go for it.
Well, you have not harmed me, so why apologize? You're uplifting me by your very existence.
Hang on. Lee, you're the Canadian one. You're supposed to be comfortable with the "I'm sorry" thing.
Oh, they do that in Taiwan too, but it's just like Hey, you're awesome. You're awesome.
Lee,
Keep being awesome.
please continue.
So so I picked up that book, and I also went through the weed thing. And part of the weed thing for me was I wanted to find out, is it true what they say? Is this a mind opener? Is this a direct line to the creator? I would like to know that, whether it's true or not. So I checked that out. I didn't find it that way at all. It wasn't what I hoped. What I have now with you guys, and with my life and myself and my children, and talking to Walter here in Taiwan, and seeing what's put in front of me on my path. It's just, here you go, here's the answer, here's the thing. And so what I observe is that all these things that go out from us truly are those ripples, and the greatness of his love, or the creator's love, or life. Like, so my definition, my way of describing that is everything that ever was, is, or ever shall be is God for me, whether that's truth or whatever name or word, whatever. And so it's all there, it's beyond the idea of gift. It's just way beyond. It's just way greater. I appreciate that. How could I not accept that? I accept that. It's awesome. It's great. So his book, I went through that, and I tried to talk to my wife at the time, family, other people involved, all this kind of things I tried to do, and it just wasn't possible and just didn't work. And then I had to leave that at the side of the road and move on with that. And I did that. But I know that, like you, man, you knew that path. You tried that. You know what that was. Like the Matrix, you've been down that road. You know what was at the end of that road. You know what's there already. It's like going this way.
Nice.
But
yeah, good observation.
What he says is beautiful, that these are human beings that are trying to fill that hole. And when society, government, or whoever with the agenda wants to hammer those people, I will not stand by and allow anyone in my presence to hammer those living beings that are trying to pick themselves up. That's the only way they know how. And you got to respect that. We got to love them for that. It may not be the needle that's going to save them, but that gets them another breath, another step, to live to in the next hug or loaf of bread. That's life for them. That's life. If you respect life, you got to respect that. Anyway, that's it.
It's all good. It's all good. I was just saying, we're getting close to the out of time, and I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to ask Joshua whatever questions they have burning inside them. What about the rest of you? No?
Hey, Joshua.
Hey, Adam.
Thank you. First off, that was really intimate, and I really appreciate you opening up about all of that. I would not have guessed a lot of it. I don't think I have a question. I just wanted to express my gratitude.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks. Yeah, very proud to be in this community. It's unlike any I've ever been in before, and it's just awesome to be around awesome people, and I'm proud. I'm very proud to be here.
That's right. We all are. Sorry.
Here's what I'll say. I wasn't you as a kid, but I grew up with a lot of friends and a large peer group that was kind of like you. And not all of them survived to our age, and not all of them have awakens. So, yeah, man, it just really feels. It really feels really good. It feels really optimistic to hear you tell this story, and to see how hard you've kicked ass in autonomy. It feels really good to see that. So thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, I knew I was at a crossroad in 2012, and I could have kept going down that same road, like Lee said, or it was. I knew it was time. It was time. the situation we're in is like too serious to F off with it. If it was the 70s, maybe, but this is a very serious point in history that we're experiencing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I dropped the source of the book and the like spiritual teachings that I did in the chat box, so you can click on that and go to the source material. Like I said, you go on the internet.
Put it in the Discord, because we'll lose the chat box as soon as the thing shuts down, but the Discord is forever.
Okay.
If you could, please. Now, this is the last call for questions, guys. I see some season 4 students here as well. So if any of you want to unmute, ask Joshua a question, add a comment.
So every day I do a morning meditation, and that keeps me anchored. And then I do a meditation right before I go to bed. And I would love to meditate more. For the last couple of years, like I've put everything into like career and into autonomy unlimited. And I know it's a bit unbalanced right now, how much energy I'm pouring into this, but I can definitely feel this like momentum that we are creating, and it's starting to like move on its own. And so I'm going to be able to like kind of take it out of fifth gear here soon, and be able to enjoy my ride, enjoy my family, enjoy my farm, enjoy my situation that I'm in. Because for me, in my perspective and my experience in my lifetime up to this point, I'm in a very specific location on this planet to pass through this shit the shitstorm we're all passing through. And I firmly believe like the analogy of sitting in the center of a hurricane, and in there you look up, there's blue sky, it's peaceful, and there is just this massive hurricane going around me. And so long as I don't get hooked or my attention gets pulled, and I'm able to continue to stay anchored, that's where I'll be throughout this whole experience, until we get to the other side, where I feel this pressure just getting tighter and tighter, and we're going to hit this point where it's going to then release, and we're going to come out to a beautiful ending, not an ending, but a beautiful experience on the other side. New reality, absolutely.
So I have to add something just to make sure that it's in this episode, because it's something you said made me think of it. So you know how often we talk about egregors, which is the energetic connection that certain groups of 2 or 3 more people have as they work together and have the same ideas, right? So one thing, of course, in autonomy, we're building the autonomy egregor, and that's why we're pouring so much energy into it, because it's getting stronger and stronger and becoming like a living entity of its own that pulls us into, and that's what creates more and more courses and more, events and things like that. But the other thing that I thought of earlier, when you were saying that heroin was pulling you by the neck, right? And so that pulling, wouldn't that be the heroin egregor? Like with all these people addicted to heroin all throughout the world, and all these people really getting deep into it, wouldn't that idea or feeling or thought of heroin, consciousness of heroin would have such a strong pull, right?
Oh,
and it
absolutely.
would really pull people into that situation.
I'd call it like a hibernation zone. You get sucked into it, and then it just tries to lull you asleep. And I got very familiar with, I did like all the drugs, and so I was a lot of times. So I was very familiar with that. It's this like certain frequency and consciousness that each drug holds, and each personality will like get plugged into those. Sometimes quite a few of them at the same time, but it will. A hibernation zone, I think, is a great way to describe it, because it'll pull you in and just like lock your mind up, fog you up, so that you are then not able to know to pull yourself out.
Like in stasis.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And
we should have a show about egregors in the future. But at just dropping these seeds because they really belong with this conversation.
Yeah.
So okay, last call for season 4 or whatever season students who would like to say something.
I would like to see an episode about egregors, actually. That's an interesting concept. I just heard about that, and that word keeps coming up, like various places like Twitter and things for me. When I first had the blueprint call with Richard, I felt something that was like after I had talked to him and I hung up, I was like, I'm noticing something. It's like a fat, happy dragon hanging over these people or something. And I was like, oh, is that what that is?
We've been feeding it for 1.5 years.
Wow. That actually makes sense, because I was on a website the other day and they're talking about the old uses of these medicines. Like people used to take methamphetamine in you could just buy an inhaler of methamphetamine at the store and just be like, and it would give it to children, no problem. Like, here's your little heroin for kids. It was fine. So maybe they didn't have that egregor around at the time. It was just a normal thing to do.
Well, a lot of those drugs, we used more herbal drugs before, so they would have
they all
a
come from
stronger.
plants.
Well, but also the herbal version would have an older, different egregor than the new chemical version. You know what I mean? Because that's a new thing that had new consciousness that it comes in.
I think we think about it differently now than we used to think about it. Like when you think of it as medicine, it's not going to do the same thing to you. When you think about it as, oh, this is a naughty thing that I do so I can get into this bad state of mind.
Because my church kicked me out and I don't have anything better to do. I'm going to go to hell anyway.
Real quick story. So from this spiritual practice, I've learned I can create energetic shields, right? So using the power of your mind. And I was still dabbling with drugs, and I did DMT. And except this time I popped out this shield before I did the drug. And that time, whereas previously, there's all sorts of things on the other side of messing with DMT, and you'll meet all sorts of entities, and they like to hang out and slither over your body sometimes. But afterwards, I popped out my shield, did DMT, and realized that I still went into that world. But then I had this shield that was literally 3 feet around me. And those entities came up to that shield and hung out, and that's as far as they could go. And I came back out of that. I'm like, oh shit, that's just real. And that was the last time I did DMT.
That's funny because I did the shield thing, but I did that because I was driving and I was really afraid of driving when I started driving really late, almost 40. 37 or something like that. And I was driving one day and I always had this shield around my car. And one time I saw a car speeding toward my car and it was almost like it was going to hit me, but then it bounced and the shield was only a foot away from the bumper. And literally the car went phew. And that happened to me a few times. One time a car even hit one of my lights, but it didn't actually hit the car. It just broke the
I had that
plastic.
same experience too. Didn't make sense.
Well, but it was I saw it in the rearview mirror. The car was going to slam into me, and then just in the last second, it looked like it bounced off the shield. So,
another time
I often pop it up.
I was downtown at the clubs, and there was this crackhead that would always come over and ask for money. And this was early on when I was playing with these shields, and I saw her coming across from the street. She started making a beeline right for me. I was like. And she literally changed directions and went back across the other street. I was like, all right, I like this stuff.
This works, yeah. Practical magic for the 21st century.
What you said about DMT, that's why I didn't. Here in Taiwan, there's a DMT analog, right? Similar chemical composition. As long as you get the MOAI to inhibit the digestion, you have the possibility, even in a country that's not down with that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about native people and what they know, but the society at large. But I wouldn't, because I knew there was things out there. I didn't need to see them to know that they were there. And I had children. I didn't want to have the risk of exposing family to something that I did not understand myself and didn't have anyone as a resource to protect me, to make those shields, whether it's from tobacco smoke or songs or chants or their ancient knowledge of protection.
I have to break some truth to you, and it's not nice, because the only person that can actually protect you is you. Like, yeah, you can hire a shaman to help you out and stuff, but the person creating the protection, it's always you.
Second that. I have a very strict protocol of like no energy work with anybody, because I'm like in a war zone on this planet. This is not a safe planet to like be on right now, and so I have a very strict protocol with energy work.
Nice. I don't, but I trust my shields. It's all good. So,
Well, Agnieszka, thanks so much for having me on. This was really fun to talk about.
This was a lot of fun. And I think this actually live streamed to the Spiritual Revolution channel. So we shall see how this turned out. But before we go and hang up, I would like to play the outro. So hang on one second. Let's do this. Thanks everybody on YouTube who's been watching it. Us. And yeah, I appreciate that. Bye. If that's good. It's not working.